Welcome to Nacht Waffen Pilot with Penny Bradley. Today's guest is Ramona Freeborn, and she's newly public. She's done 3 or 4 interviews. We tried to record this while we were at the Biomed Expo conference, and true to form, there was absolutely no sound on the recording. So this is take 2. So welcome to the show.
Why, thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, I've noticed in a lot of your shows, you're very quiet and sometimes a little cryptic. So I'm hoping to get more down and dirty detail.
That is fair play. I'm so conditioned to being public in completely different capacities that I'm so used to having to constantly edit and filter myself and use language that doesn't pin me so that I can be
all things to all people doesn't work in the SSP.
No, nor is it accurate. So yeah, ripping off the Band-Aids.
Yeah.
And the plausible, that's not what I meant. What are you talking about? Misdirection.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Being an artist, especially, coming from that background, people tend to think, for instance, the song I write is about one thing, and I will have written it about something completely different, but that's my whole, can't prove that I wrote it about anything. It's all in your mind.
Yeah, it's in the mind of the beholder.
Yes, but this is not an art piece, so.
No, this is you are part of our community, and you're telling the audience why.
Yep, a little brutal reality smackdown.
So, where do you want to start?
I'm trying to think. Our first interview was.
Our first interview started off, we were going to go in chronological order, and I noticed there was no detail, and there was also no sound recorded, so we can't even start with that.
Right. So, I did think it would be interesting to maybe look at still chronologically how my schools were used, or just, the weird school related things. And also, when I was looking through my timeline, there are so many instances of me crying out for help without really realizing it. And I'm kind of horrified looking back that nobody recognized that's what it was in school. But no, I mean, we could start with when I got called into the principal's office and told I was going to be a part of a special program and given a permission slip for my parents to sign while there was a high-ranking naval mucky-muck there.
Yeah, I haven't heard this part. Go ahead.
Aha. So in first grade, right before winter break, I got called to the principal's office. I didn't know why. I was like, wow, I didn't even do anything. I'm in trouble. But
I know that feel.
I got called to the principal's office some other times too, but so I went in, and there were probably about 4 other kids, maybe 5, in my same grade that I recognized, because I'd been to kindergarten with 1 or 2 of them. So I recognized them, and we were all in the principal's office. Principal was sitting behind their desk, and to my right of the principal was this older gentleman in 50s-ish, maybe, gray hair, and I didn't grow up around the Navy, and so, but I had children's books from back in the day with old school police officers. And so the only reference I had to somebody with that sort of blue cap and blue, jacket was an old-fashioned police officer. But there were so many like pins and shiny baubles and medals, I just thought he was like the fanciest police officer ever. I didn't know. It's like, wow.
Okay.
So
do you remember what he looks like?
Yes. He's sort of a nondescript 50s Caucasian.
Have you looked through any of the old records to see who he might be?
No, I have been tempted to, but I only recently have started really putting everything together. I made my big timeline of all the weird stuff, and even just my 3D life I remembered. And my whole life I had thought this was a weird police officer, and then as an adult looking back, I'd never really examined it. I was like, that's not a police officer, that's Navy. So
yeah. Okay, that would be something you could consider doing going forward. Some of the other people I interview have started doing that, going through the old photographs and see military officers, and they've been surprised to see who they actually remember doing this. The second thing you need to remember is that some of these memories are cover memories, so that may not actually be the person you saw.
Right.
So
I am a big grain of salt with everything sort of person, so
yeah,
it's a messy business. I'll never stop digging.
Good.
But yeah,
so you guys were in the principal's office with a Navy officer.
Yes, who was standing to our right. I was the last child to arrive, of the principal. And there's a big window behind the principal's desk into Woodlands. And the principal said, oh, hey, congratulations. Remember that IQ test you took in kindergarten at the end of the year? I thought about it, and I was like, I mean, I know we had to take a test to prove we knew our shapes and our colors and stuff. I don't think that was an IQ test. Okay. He goes, remember that? Well, you students here scored so high that we really want you to be in this special program. I remember thinking, cool, I'm smart. I didn't know I was smart. This is awesome. Nice. And now I'm in a special club, total ego trip thing. So the principal was like, okay, yeah, so you guys just take these permission slips home and have your folks sign them over the break and bring them back when you're back, and you'll get to do, just special little things. And I thought that was so cool. And then the principal got up and left the room, closed the door behind him, and the Navy man stepped behind his desk and closed the curtains. And that's all I remember. I don't remember anything after that other than bringing that permission slip home over winter break and telling my parents that I'm in some special IQ thing. I don't really even know what that means, but it sounds cool. And bringing my permission slip back and feeling kind of disappointed. I felt like there was never any sort of to-do about it. Like I had expected some special, we're going on field trips or we have special classes, because that's what they told us. And I have no memory of any of those. And I just felt sort of disappointed. I have a few, we'd go to the library a couple times, but I don't remember what happened there other than there being tissues. Very vague.
No memory at all.
I know going to the library, it was empty and it was just us, and that felt kind of weird and special. And don't remember what we did. I only remember we were given tissues. I cannot honestly say that I recall what they were used for. I can guesstimate, but I just remember because tissues felt really fancy to me. We didn't have tissues in my house. It was like toilet paper, There's no special blow your nose thing. Just,
Well, my brother always used paper towels because he blew out the toilet paper.
Needed that
But yeah.
extra haft.
Yeah.
We didn't have paper towels for a long time when I was a kid either, so all that
We
stuff
only
seemed
we
fancy
only
to me.
had them for when my brother blew his nose.
Got it.
Mom
Fair enough.
used Mom used tea towels that she washed.
Yeah.
This was the era of you made do.
Yeah.
So
So,
reuse, recycle.
yep. Yep. I definitely grew up with that vibe. Reduce, reuse, recycle. And then they had like cute little, you're taught in school. I'm not standing up, but we'd have this whole zero waste. And you're doing your little arms akimbo at your waist. Like, the whole thing.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Zero waste.
We didn't do that, but
Yeah.
I grew up on a dairy and we were poor. My parents had 5 kids by the time I was in 3rd grade, and I was well aware that we were poor. And it was waste not, want not, was our mantra about it. So,
Yep.
and in a lot of ways, I still do that. But
Yeah.
it's okay, It's better for the planet if more of us did it.
I mean, growing up, I didn't ever think of myself as poor, although we were considered poor in the community that we lived in after I started school. But I'm glad because I grew up, we cooked our own food, we made our own basic things. We weren't terribly poor actually, but less well off than those around us. And what I was grumpy about as a kid, like eating leftovers and not having real Tupperware. And, my family is a little part hippie, so there was garlic involved. Uh, now I'm grateful. But at the time, I just wanted white
There
bread.
was garlic involved.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
My father thought garlic was poisonous.
Oh.
Uh, but we grew up on a dairy. We had a half-acre garden, and my mom made her own ketchup.
Ooh, I've done that.
So
It's a
we
task.
we we would spend the entire summer processing food so that we would not be hungry all winter. And uh, in a lot of ways, it was a lot healthier than the cultural norm. But in other ways, it was an awful lot of work for little kids.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I was aware that we were doing things that other people weren't, and that my classmates thought I was weird. And they probably would have anyway, because those things that made me weird were not just my family things. I mean, this was the 1960s, and I was a girl that liked math and science.
Ooh, so
Yeah.
crazy. But yes, unfortunately.
Yeah. That's the way it operated. If you were interested in math, science, and learning other people's cultures and learning other languages, you were female, you were weird. Girls were supposed to be interested in dressing up and putting on makeup and walking around in high heels. And I wasn't. And frankly, I'm still not. um, I dress up, but I dress up goth. So it is what it is.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so you have absolutely no memory of what they actually used you for in these programs.
I don't have memory of a lot of the childhood stuff. I have,
Okay.
un- unfortunately, but realistically, I do have some memory of initial trauma, for just breaking you when I was 5 is when that started. Some other stuff started before then, but I do remember turning 5 was when they started Mind Fracture, MK Ultra stuff.
Okay. Well, I know that you are acquainted with Misha Johnston.
Yes. Thank you.
And she has a regression that she offers. And I know that she has a sliding scale based on your income. So you might look into that to get more memory of what happened. I've not heard any complaints about her process. There are folks that I have heard complaints about, so I don't recommend them.
I have always been so guarded. I've always wanted to do a regression, but I have been so guarded about it. One of the reasons why I was excited to initially meet Misha, and this is years ago now, was because I wanted to get to know a person well enough to feel like I could judge their energy and intention and technique and all that. And I will fully vouch for Misha. She is an amazing human being, and I still need to do that regression. And
Yeah,
yes,
that will help you fill in some of the blanks if you want to know.
It's a
And
big blank spot.
that's something that I want to stress to our audience is not everyone really should know.
Whew.
Some of the things, if you're living your life in peace and happiness, I don't recommend going down this path. If you're
No.
already miserable and it's driving you crazy, then yes, go down the path to find some peace. But if you're living a happy life, you don't need to go there.
I could not agree more. The main reason why I finally decided to tackle all of this, because I had a lot of these memories my whole life. Just in terms of these weird background memories that made absolutely no sense and were largely of horrific abuse and torture. And it was so maddening to spend basically your whole life having all of these experiences that I couldn't explain, and so it just made me feel crazy. So I just tried to pretend I wasn't crazy. I'm like, well, if I know I'm crazy, then I'm not crazy, right? Like, just put that in the corner. Don't look at it. Whatever. You
know? Before my memories were activated, I had ongoing nightmares that I now recognize as flashbacks filtered through my subconscious because I didn't know what they were. They were coming through even weirder than the originals were. And the memories did explain the nightmares. And having the memories, I was able to let go of the flashbacks. So if you are having problems, then yes, pursue it. But if you're not, you don't need this shit.
Leave it alone. It's not worth it. Like, I mean, to me, too, the irony was when I finally decided to really stare down those demons that had plagued me pretty much my whole life. Because I was like, I am a strong adult now and I love myself and I can handle this. You know, I knew it was a Pandora's box. I knew I had a ton of repressed memories. I just genuinely did not think it had anything to do with all of this. Like, I really thought it was just like some childhood rape and torture from somebody I knew or something, and I was just trying to block out who it was. And I was just like, you know what, I'm old enough now, I'm going to face this. I need to just, it's been really messing me up for a long time. Talk about Pandora's box. I thought I was opening like a lunchbox of shit I could deal with. And then it was a million times bigger and wilder and worse because I really, when I first started trying to acknowledge this stuff, I did not associate it with any sort of secret programs or anything. I really thought it was just a bite-sized thing, not like a herd of elephants sort of sized thing. It was hard not to be super overwhelmed, and it's hard not to feel ridiculous about it because it was so massive and beyond what I would have ever imagined.
Yeah, that's one of the common threads through this, is that when you don't have the memories, but you have the nightmares, it's really easy to think that this was some relative of yours or the guy down the street. And then once you get into it and find out, oh my God, it's an agency of the government, that they're supposed to be protecting us. Or in your case, there are military officers involved in your recruitment. This puts it in a whole nother league. And it means that for the average victim, there really is no recourse. I mean, if it's your uncle or your cousin or the guy down the street, you can press charges and that person will go to prison. But if you're talking about the Navy
And
and
doctors without name tags.
yeah, doctors without name tags, in my case, they erased the memories of the faces. So I can't go through the photos to find out who it was. And that's one of the big issues that I have, is because my story has been verified.
Yeah.
I've been verified by a CIA archivist. If I could remember the faces, I could go to court and press charges. But because I can't remember their faces, I can't testify against them.
The face thing is so interesting too, because I remember most of the faces from my like 3D, or I don't know how to put it, this,
Yeah,
my
we
interactions in this.
we tend to call it here and now.
There we go. Yeah.
Here and now versus
It's
out
all
there.
3D. It's not
Yeah, it's all
some made up thing
3D.
out
It's
there.
all military. As you testified to, it was a Navy officer. So it's all 3D. It's all real. It's all military. It's just some of it is here and now, and some of it is out there.
That's a good way to put it. So I tend to remember most of the faces from my here and now interactions, but when it's out there, unless I see someone whose face triggers me to remember them out there, unless that's how I regain that memory that I am never expecting. I cannot I struggle very hard to try and see faces. If I'm trying to recall something, if I'm going through my own memory, walking through what I did that day, it's a blank. It's a gross, blurry, flesh-colored blank. Just like I can't, words and numbers also get blurred out, where if I'm not looking directly at them, I can see that they're there, but I can't read them. And then if I look directly at them, they're just straight up blurred.
Yeah, there's a lot of
I'm still battling that.
there are a lot of memories that have been messed with. Um, I don't know which faction you were with, but when I came back, they had a helmet on me that connected me to a monitor where the tech could see my memories, and the tech would go through and delete certain things. And I have literal memories of, especially at Langley, of seeing people from the hips down. They're there. I can see the skirts, hose, high heels. I can see the slacks. I can see the dress shoes. I can see the orderlies' white uniform pants. But from the hip up, They're invisible, see-through. I don't even get the flesh-colored blob you talked about. They're invisible. And then other things they just left completely alone, like the memory of the Naga at oh yeah, I have memories of an ET in a lab coat with upright, tall, 6 foot tall, wearing a lab coat, and her tail behind her going 20 feet. and I knew she was a she. And I have absolute crystal clear memory of her. I have clear memory of worker class Draco standing over the typing pool in one of the office rooms. They weren't part of the typing pool, but they were in there supervising something. And I have very clear memory of the typing pool. And they were all women. There were no men in there. And I can remember all of that. But when it comes to the actual people who did stuff to me, oh, hell no. They're invisible. And this was deliberately done. I remember the helmet because it looked like something out of sci-fi. And it had things all over it. And there was a human who was deleting memories. And it was that whole 55 and back. They went through and deleted what they didn't want me to know. And it's frustrating.
Yeah, there's been so many times where I've desperately wanted to know who I am interacting with. Like, I will try every angle within my memory to skirt around being able to see these people's faces because I worked with them so much. I want to know what they looked like. I know what they look like in training simulations, but those were in VR. Those were avatars. I have no idea if they look the same as their avatars. I don't.
Yeah, they can make anything as an avatar.
Exactly. And that was another grand example of me thinking I was getting memories initially, and then thinking they were screen memories, and then finally, as you say, parting the curtains and realizing this was all just a training exercise, essentially trauma bonding, to create a more cohesive unit that would work harder for each other because we had bonded. The concept of love is so rare and so foreign out there that to have even an ounce of it, even if it's so
well, I was always getting in trouble in Nacht Waffen because we were expected to have sexual relationships without bonding. And I couldn't do that. I kept bonding, and then I would get into trouble for having gotten attached to a coworker.
You caught some feelings.
Yeah, I caught feelings every damn time. And they were never returned because the men involved didn't have feelings. There was one man out there, and I have not talked about him. But there was one man on a ship that caught feelings for me. And back in the here and now, he hunted me down. And that was the most amazing thing, to have had someone out there actually give a damn about me and remember me.
Yeah.
And that's why I've never spoken of him. I still won't give his name, but he was brutally murdered for hunting me down. They dumped him off an interstate bridge.
Oh.
He died from a bone infection afterwards.
That's
like I said,
they sure know how to be brutal.
Brutally murdered him. So
yeah. That is, I mean, I think because, not that there isn't time travel and crossover, but we came through different generations of tactical theories about how to do some of this more efficiently. You know, you had to bear a lot of the brunt of, let's just throw it against the wall and see what sticks, sort of.
I had
You know,
2,200 altars and they used every one of them.
yes. So I don't think I had the exact same circumstances or programming or even programs I was involved with. I think there several different, I worked for so many different factions. I mean, it was genuinely licensed out like a piece of intellectual property.
Well, that's how they treat all of us. It's just most of us don't remember that.
Yeah,
Most of us only remember one or two factions and think that's all there is.
I
But
win.
the standard was that 13 by 13 by 13 cubic hierarchical array. So you had 13 basic skill sets, and each of those was subdivided, and each of them had total autonomy of memory so that you could be sold to competing factions and
Oh yeah.
not betray each other.
Mm-hmm. But
And
that wouldn't stop the factions from trying to get in there either. That's another interesting.
yeah, so it's been interesting pulling up memories of this group and that group and the other group and the other group and the other group and the other group, and the languages that my alters speak are amazing. And I once did one of those memory games where it was like, okay, how many languages do my alters speak? And I'm sitting there and they start popping into my head. And it's like, really? I know that many. Because the Germans use Schwabish, the Americans use several dialects of English and sometimes Spanish. Uh, a couple of the Earth agencies that I work for,
Mm-hmm.
that's a polite way of putting it,
Yes, it is.
uh, they use Spanish, several versions of Spanish. They use Brazilian Portuguese, they use Sicilian, they use straight Italian, um, several dialects of German, not just Slavish. And I'm going through and going, wow.
I was used as a fake Russian asset at one point. I'm pretty darn sure because I have weird memories of my handler moving me into an apartment and and just being yelled at, and everybody spoke Russian.
Do you remember what they actually said? Or are you just hearing Russian in the memory?
The thing is, it's a memory, and so I can't, like, when I'm reviewing it, don't know what they're saying based on the Russian words they're saying, but I remember the sort of mental, like the understanding of it, the broad brushstrokes
Yeah,
of the
that's
conversation.
what I get is broad brush strokes and
Yes.
no
I know why
detail.
she's mad at me, but I don't know exactly what she's calling me, although it's a list.
Um, I get things like in Italian, I will get, okay, we're doing analysis, and I've been given details that I have to work through to give them options. And so I know I'm an analyst there, but I don't know what I'm analyzing.
Right. Yep.
So that's the way my memory works. But
can relate to that. Where I'm like, I know what I'm doing, but I don't really know what I'm doing. It's that broad brush stroke thing of,
Yeah. I know what I'm supposed to be doing, but I don't know the specifics of the job.
yes,
So, uh,
yes. Like some of my memories, I know I've just, earth licensing for some people. A lot of it for me was assassination. So
yeah,
usually when I'll get a memory, it's usually right after I have completed my mission. So I'll know that I just did something, but I don't know who it was, and I only have a vague understanding of the setting that I just came from. Like I'll remember if it's a house or an apartment or a ship or a boat but I don't have the specifics.
you're lucky.
Ugh, I agree.
I had to piggyback during a hit. So I know exactly how my alter goes about it, and I know exactly who she took out that time. And that was one of those, I still don't know what to think of Peter the Insider. But he said that particular altar at that time had over 500 confirmed kills.
Ooh.
And when I talked to the CIA archivist about it, she agreed. So she
The only
said
yeah.
she said the number's higher than that now, and she said that I have 5 of those altars, and that they are each in that range, and
Hmm.
they, yeah, I was mortified completely because this is completely against my personal ethical system. And yet they got talked into it because they were told they were protecting the United States.
At
That
least
these
they had that sort of a
Yeah,
lie.
at least they had to be talked into it.
Yeah,
So,
so full of propaganda and ego stroking within any of these programs is, you know, the only altar I have piggybacked so far, unfortunately, was the one that was used or eventually used as a priestess for lack of a better term, satanic rituals. Um, that is just like, there was nobody told me I was saving the world. As her, because that's not me. It is, but it isn't.
there's altars.
Yeah, I was proud of how good I was at my job, and you don't get that good without a lot of experience. I know exactly some of the faces and people of the people I have used in rituals, and they were sacrificed 100%. And yeah, to be that up close and personal and to have full eye contact while you're doing that, not something I wish I remembered. But
Yeah, like I said at the beginning, these are memories that most of us really don't want.
that messed me up. I mean, the problem with a lot of this is I feel like I'm just constantly vacillating between like regaining memories and having to deal with the PTSD of it. And then you kind of you acknowledge it and sort through it and integrate it however work through
Mm.
it. And you're like, okay. And then it's just another round of it. So it's just
Oh, well, I had the PTSD without knowing why.
my whole life. Yes. Not, I mean, pretty much since I was 5, possibly younger, if I'm really looking back, but I don't have those memories to back it up until 5. Horrific PTS, like having to live with that and not be able to ask for help or even acknowledge it because then you can't explain it.
Well, I know I was weird in school.
Oh yeah.
Um, and I know that we moved a lot. And as an adult looking back on that, I think that my father was running from something. And it was the time frame where CPS was, Child Protective Services was becoming powerful.
Right.
And the schools were pushing it. And so I think that the 5 of us were weird enough that the schools were noticing.
Yeah.
And that was part of why we were moving so much. And when I got married at 19, my father told me, never get involved with the CIA, the FBI, or the mafia. And that was in 1974. And I have wondered ever since just what he was involved in.
Yeah, what did he know to make it? I mean, that's a bold statement, which is I would agree with.
I would
You
agree
have a
with.
choice.
I know he was a Teamster.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I have no idea what he was involved in that he made that kind of a statement. But yeah, it's hard when you piggyback and you watch your alter kill someone.
And you can
Up,
feel their feelings while they're doing it, like just the
oh
level
yeah,
of pride I had. It was like being a
oh yes,
bartender, like doing flare tricks as a bartender was almost the equivalent. And it was horrifying to me.
yeah. You're stuck. You know this person is in your body. You know this person is using your body to do this, and you are forced to watch and feel, but you can't stop it. You can't do
Mm-mm.
anything. You're just witnessing. And you come out of it knowing exactly what you're being used for. And and then I come on YouTube and people call me a hero. And it's like I feel so filthy.
That's I mean, I think you put it so well when you discuss the fact that if you're getting memories back where you're some good guy saving everybody and everything, that's just not how these programs work. Um, for one, these
Yeah,
programs cost a lot of money. Not one of these programs is a low budget operation. And it's not like they're
yeah.
asking anybody's Congress for that money publicly. Mm-mm. They figured out how to make
It's
their own
what,
money much quicker.
$32 trillion has disappeared from the Pentagon since, well, during this century. So they're getting money from Congress, whether Congress approves it or not.
Totally true. But I also think they set up some fail safe, so even if they were to be completely cut off, that would not necessarily significantly cramp their style. They already figured out how to generate their own
Hmm.
funding. So, yeah, you don't get paid to be a good guy. Just like prohibition creates higher markup and a bunch of criminal. You don't
You make
Being a good guy is
something
not lucrative.
you make something illegal, and all of a sudden it has the forbidden fruit allure. And
Yeah,
forbidden
great
fruit
point.
makes lots of money.
Mm-hmm.
And every war that the United States has been involved in my lifetime. Okay, I was born in 55. Every war we have been involved in has been for gold, oil, drugs, human trafficking, other resources, all of which make money. And all of them have gone right into the hands of the bankers, the gun dealers, the CIA. And people need to stop going along with all the propaganda and supporting this war, that war, every war. Because if they're not invading our shores, we have no business being there. And just like you were quoting me at the conference, I said, if you're involved in any of these programs and you think you're a hero, you need to dig deeper into those memories, because you're not. None of us are. If you're thinking you're a hero, you're listening to cover memories, you're listening to hero songs. Okay, I need to define a hero song. It's a phrase that I use on Facebook to describe some of my peers in the community. Okay, in ancient times, folks would go into war. Their friends would be killed. They would be injured, sometimes seriously. Not everybody made it. Okay. So they're sitting around the campfire while they're sewing each other up. And they're telling these stories about how wonderful their dead comrade was in battle, how they did this, how they did that, how they did the other. And just like fishermen's stories, each telling they got more heroic. Got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. By the time that they've got this story pretty much memorized, they're the biggest hero who ever lived. Now, that may be a way of dealing with their PTSD. It may be a way of dealing with their conscience about what they did. But it's not the objective truth.
No.
And people need to know that.
It's
a coping mechanism. It's
and
not
propaganda.
The objective truth. And so when you're talking to people, especially in this community, we are so traumatized that most of us are telling hero songs. If you think you're a hero, you need to dig deeper into those memories, because you're not. You're not saving children because you're working for the agency that kidnapped you as a child. Even if you rescue children from whatever's happening to them, you're putting them right into the hands of the people who kidnapped you. That's not saving anybody.
Well, and, all of these altars have their own lives and their own timelines, and it's not as though there aren't perhaps brief moments where, in a very small way, you can try and do something good. Not that every altar is even interested in that by any means. I wouldn't say the majority of mine are. But, sometimes you get a little more emotional leeway depending on your jobs and skill set and circumstance. So, I can try and remember those tiny, tiny little bits of trying to, they're so minuscule. It's not jumping in and saving the day.
I have done things out there that people have told me about afterwards. There have been times when I was supposed to kill people and I didn't.
Yeah.
There have been times that I was supposed to help someone and I shoved them through a portal instead.
Yes.
There have been times that I got so fed up with what was being shoved my direction that I literally blew people up.
Yes.
And some of the people that I've done these things to are public. Some of them are not. But yeah, people have come to me and said, oh, as a child, you saved my life. They were going to kill me and you did blah, blah, blah. And yeah, I did. But this wasn't what I was there for.
No, you try and sneak in little moments of rebellion.
I have done things that would be considered criminal here in order to save children there. And so I am aware that even as I was saving that child, I was committing a felony. So it's not like I'm even heroic then.
Nothing's clean out there, so to speak.
Nothing is cut and dried, nothing is clean, and I am perfectly aware.
It's a grotesque grayscale.
Yeah, it's
At best.
all gray. And anyone who thinks I'm a hero
Hasn't spent enough time with some of those folks.
I've spent enough time with my memories trying to find some sort of peace that I know I'm not. And accepting that I'm not is part of the solution.
That was not your job. Your job was not to, nor would it have made money. I mean, that's the brutal bottom line, is you don't pay to create an asset or license an asset, which I'm sure is also expensive, to not try and make that money back. This is a giant, horrific slave trade scenario that's so sophisticated, most people wouldn't believe us.
Most people don't believe us.
Yeah.
Most people think of us as entertainment. And they think we're crazy. And
I understand that.
I've come to terms with I'm speaking for that 5% who believes me. And the other 95% will find out eventually. I mean, how long have I been saying that all the triangular ships out there are built in Utah? And they finally came out with one of the intelligence services came out with a logo that has the triangle ship right on it. So, if that's not saying Penny's telling the truth, I don't know what it's saying. I've been saying that since 2016. It's in my videos. In fact, I really pissed off Robert Stanley when I said that. All the triangle ships are American.
Yeah. It's my understanding. I have no...
Most of the saucer ships are German. Some of them are American. The Tic Tac ships are tall whites. I've said this all along.
Well,
so now we're getting proof. Why is the Navy exposing the Tic Tac ships? Because the tall whites are their allies and have bases in Area 54 and Area 51 and Pine Gap and.
Yep.
In fact, there's a base of them at Fort Knox in Kentucky. So there's bases of tall whites all over the world because they're allied with the American government. And they have this constant drip, drip, drip of technology so that they get to stay here. But what the American government has never acknowledged is that this is a covert invasion and that they are a superior species, which means they will take over.
There's so many factions. I mean, that's the other thing that's hard to really explain to people. It's not a two-sided battle. It's like I don't know what a 30-sided thing would be, but it's...
Oh, there's at least 6.
It's,
There's the Germans.
So many.
There's the bankers in space, otherwise known as ICC, Planetary Corps, or the Alliance. Bankers in space. There's Solar Warden, which is American. There was Earth Defense Force, which is now called Space Force. There was Kruger, which is a mercenary company. There was Monarch, which is another mercenary company, and they operate differently. One of them will enhance you where you look like a Borg, and the other one shoots you up with black goo. Um,
You
and
look
then
real human still.
you look real human, but you're just as not as the Krugers. And then every country that has nuclear weapons has a space program. Every single one of them. So you've got what, 10 countries now that are out there in space? And the North Koreans just joined the party. That's part of why they wanted so badly to have nuclear weapons, was so they could join the space program. They are so desperate to do that, they're starving their people instead.
Yeah, that one hurts my feelings. Human suffering really bothers me. It's so unnecessary. There's so much of it is so unnecessary.
Any country that is starving their people to pay for their space program, I can't respect those people. Now,
But it's a big jungle out there.
It has nothing to do with the people themselves. It has to do with
Yeah.
their government programs. That's one of the recent things that I've had to deal with, is because I served with the Germans, people assume I'm racist. Because I'm this pale white-skinned thing that burns in the sun, they assume I'm racist.
That's not really how that word. That's not even the definition of that word. That's so silly. Not that it's not trying to be
Yeah.
redirected.
So, I'm going to state for the record, my people are Terrans, people of Earth. No matter what color, what shape, what eye color, what hair texture, I don't give a shit. If you're a human from Terran, you're my people. Deal with it.
Yep. Divide and conquer, though. I mean,
yeah. Yeah.
Just that simple. And slavery, it's just such an old slavery tactic of telling one group of slaves that they're better than another group of slaves and letting them have some sort of special privilege or enforcement power. It's just divide and conquer. God forbid we all get together.
Actually, that's true. If we got together, we would override the slavers.
It would.
And if we overrode the slavers, then we would have a world where we might actually accomplish something together.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my personal goal is overriding the slavers. And
Yes.
You will find that I have a lot of folks on my social media, not just Facebook, but others, that I have a lot of the people who are from the slavers, and they constantly appear, twist my words, and then I end up with, do I block this person and erase their voice? Do I constantly argue with this person? Or do I keep them around as feedback to know how pissed the slavers are at me? There are a couple of them I've kept around to see how pissed the slavers are.
Your little litmus friends, like litmus test.
Litmus test. I know these people are what they are, so I can trust how they're going to behave because I know what they are.
Yeah.
Some of the others, if they're really stupid, I'll just block them. But if it's someone that I know knows what they're talking about, because whenever you annoy the powers that be, they send the lower level agents, and they have script, and they'll work together. And you can watch them And it's hilarious because they're working from a script, and it's this one says this and that one says that, and this one says that and this one says that, and they're too fast to be the same person on two different profiles. They don't have time to log in and out. But there are these two idiots with scripts. And those guys, I just block them immediately. The next level, they come up with a reasonable argument.
Refreshing.
They think they're smart.
Right.
But they're like, look at me, I'm an agent. Their aura screams that. I block them too. It's the next one's up. It's the bosses that when they show up, they make sense when they talk. They're an actual challenge. They keep my brain working. And they don't know I feel that way about them. They think they're actually accomplishing something. And then there's the ones from the level above, the folks that are from the elites. They have already bypassed all the agencies, and you're dealing with the folks that actually run the world. And those people come up with stuff that really make me think about things. Educate me. Some of them have changed my perspectives on things, and there's value in that. Keeps you on your toes. And so I hear their perspective, and I know what it's like to be their victim. And no, I'm not buying into their shit.
No, but a debate, we've lost so much of the art form of debate and knowledge sharing through the form of debate. I love a good debate because I love exploring a thing from multiple angles. And because it can change your perspective and broaden it. Doesn't necessarily mean I agree with all of those angles, but if they're real, I need to acknowledge them and at least understand how they operate and why.
And we're never going to fix the problem by ignoring it.
Nah, that's not how infections work.
Yeah. We're never going to fix the problem by ignoring these people's perspective. So At least at this point, I have annoyed them enough that they're coming and giving their side.
Nice.
So I guess I do serve a function.
We're all our little cog in some sort of wild contraption.
Yeah. So we have discussed your naval officer. We have discussed that you were used as a priestess. What else do you remember?
I do. So I was referring earlier to those sort of trauma bonding VR training exercises that a team and a small, 5-person team that I was a part of was put through. It was a new concept they were trying out, and that was ICC. It was not like it was a small tactical team. I think we were mostly sent out to either retrieve things or destroy things, although I do think a lot of it was retrieval. So I do remember working with ICC, for lack of a better name, on that. It was interesting because it was such a new program. They had this whole budget to do this new concept of bonding teams because then they'll work harder for each other, which absolutely was true, 100%. When you have that feeling of love, you will pull stuff out that nobody imagined you had.
You can
Everybody.
cuss on my show.
Right. Okay. So yeah, you will pull shit out. Love is one of the most powerful things out there. And when you love someone or people, you will go above and beyond to ensure their safety or their safety or the success of the mission. But it was funny because it was it was sort of like a beta program. They were still kind of like testing it out, having to prove it, but they had this whole budget. And so the room that they would do our training in was like very futuristic and sleek and like modern looking. Like everything was like this, everything was white and rounded and you couldn't really see any controls. It was like so futuristic, like an actual, like when you're on a biological ship or something, like that kind of was the design vibe I think they were going for. And the office had this poster that said imagine, but it was like image in, and like they had this whole little spiel. But what was funny is when leadership and budget folks weren't in there seeing it all, when you were actually just going through the thing, because it was made to look so futuristic and there was no control panels. When they were actually running the project, they'd have to remove a bunch of these panels to actually get to the controls to run the thing. It's like,
that is funny.
They'd be pulling up a couple choice floorboards and a couple little, wall panels and stuff to actually get to these things that were hidden, because of course it wasn't that high tech. I just remember thinking that was kind of hilarious. And spot on how stuff like that runs anyway. It's all a dog and pony show, and everybody's chasing after that budget. So yes, I worked for ICC in some sort of small tactical team capacity. I mostly remember our training. Don't claim to remember a ton of our missions. I do believe a lot of them were absolutely suicide missions, and we were put into sleeves or clones, so that it was a non-issue to be disposed of at the end of the mission, be it successful or failure. A lot of them, they weren't all successful. But no, I worked with ICC, whatever you want to call them. I do have memories of working with Mars Defense Force. I was going to say Solar Warden. I do have some vague memories of that too, but
English or German?
The patches that I remember were the American MDF.
Okay.
I do also, yes, I have more sort of Mars Defense Force memories from the American programs, but I do also have memories of working with the Germans. Most of those memories are on ships, on a larger ship, possibly two different ships. So those are totally different than, say, MDF. At one point I was, doing perimeter security. I mean, so many different weird jobs you can have.
I can't share the patches from the German version because
the symbolism.
It's up against the so-called Nazi symbolism.
Right.
And I already got in trouble on social media for doing that. So.
Man, it always bums me out when somebody can completely co-opt a symbol that has existed for so long and has such a rich history of meaning and power, and some small group that has power for maybe a handful of years, maybe just a handful, and just suddenly own this symbol, and then nobody else is allowed to touch it or use it. I mean,
yeah,
talk about controlling a narrative.
The symbol that I recall is the stylized eagle holding Mars in its claws.
Oh, wow.
That was what we used, but I can't share the graphic.
Right.
but it was a very elegant, beautiful thing, and full of full of traditional symbolism, and did not have any actual World War II
Right.
meanings to it. It was the eagle from the traditional German people. So
Yeah.
it was a symbol that has gone back for 5,000 years. It's so it was classy and elegant and full of tradition, and yet can't share it.
I can share let's see. This is totally a sketch. I don't know if people will be able to see it very well or if that's even legible.
That hold it back just a little.
That focusing
Tilt
better?
it. Tilt. We've got your hand,
Oh,
but not the
let's
symbol.
see if I can.
Yeah, we saw it for a minute, and then he brought it in too close.
Ah,
So
well, it's an anchor with some wings and some stars and it
yeah,
says Soul 4. There's a red cross. I'm trying to figure out my lighting. I'm so sorry. This is, I'm sure, very sloppy.
well,
But
it's
I've been
okay.
trying to draw what little I remember. So that was, I've been told it was Solar Warden by other people. I mean, I have memories of what I was doing when I was wearing that patch. It's pretty limited. I'm still working on it, but um, was an American. Some people call it Black Navy. I don't know. Everybody's got their own terminology. I do remember my uniform. Oh, and actually, I looked up because I was trying to identify my rank, like based on what I was wearing. Because you can see a bunch of people wearing a bunch of different things.
Yeah,
Uh, where is it? I had to look up what to even call the little hat, the cap I was wearing. Like, I don't know all of these official terms. And then reading what I'm searching to try and figure it out is hilarious. I'm like, that weird thing. Yeah, it's so hard to describe
yeah.
something when you don't know what
I
to
I
call it.
had I had the same kind of thing trying to figure out what my rank was with Nacht Waffen,
Yeah.
and we've come to the conclusion that the rank that I actually held in Nacht Waffen was the equivalent of a second lieutenant, but they considered me to be Navy on loan to them, and so Navy doesn't have a second lieutenant, so I was a lieutenant, which is first lieutenant. So it's been real interesting trying to figure it out. And the uniform colors, because I was Navy on loan to them, I wore
Hmm,
blue most of the time
interesting.
until I was actually on a ship. And on a ship, I wore the same dress blacks or dress whites as everyone else. It was really crazy trying to on Mars. I was in blues where Mars, the German Mars Defense Group, Marsische Heimscheld, wore browns and oranges, and so I really stuck out.
I can't tell you how long it took me to figure out the name of my cap, which was a garrison cap. I mean, like, just silly things. Okay, so I found my notes. Um, it appears in my career when I had that patch on. Still don't know the name of the program other than I can draw the patch and I know it's on Mars. Um, it appears that I was a senior non-commissioned officer in barracks dress, which I mean was appropriate given where I was in these memories.
Mm.
Um,
So
it
you
was
didn't have a smart suit?
not in the barracks. I mean, I don't know what I wore when I was off base, but I do know walking, because I specifically have this memory of walking around the flight line, or I don't know what to call it. It's a very large cavern. It was protected from the elements, but it was where all the aircraft were. And the different lines that you'd follow that delineated the different areas. So there's a smattering of aircraft there. It was probably small for a base, but it was very big in that there were a lot of different styles even. There's a fair amount going on there.
Why that they were underground?
My feeling is that it was just, I mean, aside from not being seen, which is nice, just protection from the elements.
Because my memories were that the sandstorms would create such a static field that it would fry the electronics of anything that was on the surface. So anything that was electronic based had to be underground for its protection.
It was definitely an enclosed space, and it was rounded. There were no hard corners in terms of the walls and ceiling. Not that it was like a circle. It was sort of a rounded rectangle scenario. And yeah, there were different, there's people working on the aircraft. I'm sure I don't know all of the proper terminology for everybody's jobs. And they had different colored jumpsuits and things. I wasn't wearing a jumpsuit, which is what initially kind of stood apart for me, because almost everybody else down there that's actually working on these aircraft all over the place and ferrying them around and doing things, they're largely wearing kind of just your coveralls,
Yeah.
Jumpsuits. Yeah. It's a dark red and an orange. I think it was more about visibility than anything. But yeah, then I was doing some sort of inspection, not that people were kowtowing to me in a sense. Like I was, I wasn't harassing people. I was just walking the line, checking in, I think really more specifically on my little slice of the pie, my ship, I assume. But just, it's such a funny snippet of a memory, because honestly, the main thing I remember is feeling really kind of on point, because, I'd probably just been out for a good long while and hadn't been back for a minute. And so to be wearing this uniform again, that's all properly starched, and my hair is pulled back all tight, and I have new boots. That was I felt really, really fancy, because I have my new boots, and I was allowed to keep my old boots. They weren't totally trashed, and I was allowed to keep them. Like they were still in my room in the little closet. Felt kind of extra special to have like a spare of something. You don't usually get to have extra stuff.
The Germans, you didn't own anything. When you went into the showers, you came out and your clothes were in a stack on a chair with the boots on the floor in front of them. And they might be your boots, they might be boots that somebody else wore the day before. But yeah.
Yeah, wearing your own boots is nice.
We owned nothing.
So. Yeah. Which is, so different than this specific memory, or, because the bummer about new boots is that they are not broken in. That absolutely was the case. So I think that's probably why I was taking a bit of an extra leisurely long distance walk while inspecting stuff, as I was trying to break my boots in. Because man, my old ones were so perfect, but they looked like garbage. They did not look,
They did not look military anymore.
No, they were way too comfortable.
But if you're out marching or out on the surface, comfortable mattered.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you remember much about the surface?
Yes, but in weird snippets. Like I'm still, I do not have a completely linear recall of anything. I just have these little puzzle piece snippet moments. But I think I was telling you when I saw you at the conference about the one of the funnier memories I have is going up top from an underground facility that was very much more of a laboratory
Okay.
setting because my coworkers were wearing lab coats. And I was with some coworkers and we just went up top for a breath of fresh air on our break. Just kind of like, shoot the breeze and get a little fresh air. And I kind of just stepped into this memory as myself. And so I have some sort of context and I'm trying to play it cool, like, haha, I'm not a different consciousness, sort of in here at the same time. So I'm trying to be cool about it. And I really thought that we were in the desert on Earth because we went up top, no special contraptions or anything. It's nighttime. And it's a very calm night. And it's a desert setting, like Nevada or something. It's not like it's all just red sand or anything. It's just a desert setting. I really thought that I was in Nevada. And I thought, oh, look at the moon. I love looking at the moon and the stars. And so I look up and I see a moon and it looks a little weird. It's not quite full or anything though. And I'm like, well, it's weird looking, but whatever. I'm not going to dwell on that. Let me go check out the stars on the other side of the sky now that I've glanced at the moon that I'm not sure about. So I'm just going to kind of brush over it. That's weird. Look to the other side of the sky to look at the stars. And there's a really weird looking moon. I mean, ugly. I'm so sorry. That's rude. This moon is funky looking. It's got chunks. It's not a beautiful sphere. Yes. So I immediately did this whole like looking from one side to the other, doing all these double takes, like, what? Because it's this little here and now consciousness sneaking in the back door of another one and just thinking I'm so comfortable on Earth and I literally had to look up. This is before I even acknowledged a lot of stuff when I had that memory, and I had to look up. I'm like, where was I? I looked up. I'm like, okay, so Mars has 2 moons, and I found pictures of the moon. So I was like, yeah, there's that really funky looking one, the smaller one.
Yeah, Phobos and Deimos, and one of them is really funky looking.
Really?
It's hit by lightning from those storms.
Poor buddy.
The sandstone,
Sandstorm.
The sandstorms go around the whole planet and build up such static electricity that they hit Phobos and Deimos with lightning strikes. And that's why they're so deformed.
They are not as pretty. I feel like that's a mean thing to say. Maybe I've been spoiled with our like beautiful, at least apparently spheroid looking moon that we have. But
apparently spheroid. You never know what any of them actually are.
Yeah. There's what I don't know is the vast majority.
So,
but yes. I mean, I have that funny moment of seeing the moons when I wasn't really prepared for them because it was this me, not the other me that I'm sure had seen it a million times and wouldn't have been impressed.
Well, any of the planets in the solar system, you look up into the sky and you're going to get the same constellations. So until you see the moons, you're really not going to be sure.
Yeah.
And I keep saying Mars has an atmosphere. You go
Absolutely.
out, it's just really, really cold at night.
I mean, it kind of reminds me of the high desert, but also if you were at an extreme elevation in a weird, that makes sense in terms of,
it's like 8,000 foot elevation.
Of the air. Yeah. Very thin air comparatively and gets cold at night and is a little, less verdant. less
Well, that's
full of,
because it's not got a lot of water on
or
the surface.
food or nutrients to support all the different, it's a little sparse.
Yeah. Although, if my memories are correct, it's just literally crawling with bugs and reptiles.
Because they're well suited for that environment. I mean,
Yeah,
they
they
are
are
well
well
suited,
suited for that.
or at least better than us, that's for sure.
Better than mammals. But, it's just crawling with bugs and reptiles. And especially toward the poles,
Hmm.
um, where there's more water.
Hmm. Yeah, I still am not clear on the locations of the different facilities that I was working at. Um,
I keep being drawn to Olympus Mons,
hmm,
or I probably am saying that backwards. I keep being drawn to that on the map, like that's where at least Plima is.
hmm,
But I don't know for sure. And I know that since I was there, that Neu Berlin was built. So there's at least two German cities on Mars. And Neu Berlin is the capital of the German breakaway civilization. So some of my alters, the one that worked with Herr Mayor, we would come back and report to Neu Berlin. And so I knew it was there. I can't find it on a map.
right. I mean, they're not
But
exactly forthcoming about that stuff publicly.
that's one of the things that they blocked from my memory is location. That
Yes. Yeah. I wish I could remember the rest of this facility that I remember that patch with my little flight line memories and my fancy new boots. But I do get the feeling that while I was stationed out of there, my actual job was going elsewhere, and I would just come back to report because while I felt really fancy in that uniform, I really loved my job in that position. I don't even remember what it was. I just know that I loved it because it afforded me the ability to travel, and I felt so much more free. When you're in a
mm,
smaller group and you don't have top brass crawling up your craw every minute, you know, it's a little more relaxed, but you are also absolutely there to accomplish something. So it's more relaxed in
yeah,
some ways. The stakes are very real. The responsibility is very serious. But I don't remember loving a lot of my jobs, but I'm not even sure exactly what I did for that job. I just do have a memory of really appreciating that job. It was better than a lot of the other jobs I'd had, even just in that altar or timeline or,
brief
you know,
memory.
yeah.
Do you have memories of ETs on Mars or anywhere else?
I mean, yes. Not so much ETs on Mars, not that I don't. Like, I remember spiders. Like, I remember what everybody looks like and their sort of feeling, like the energy of
Hmm.
them. But I don't have a lot of specific memories interacting with them. I would assume I remember their energy and their appearance because I have interacted, but I
Hmm.
don't have a lot of those specific memories. I do have not a fair number of memories of other people, ETs, I guess, out in space on ships, primarily, and a lot of that actually had to do with the sleeve program or whatever it was called that I was involved with, where I would be put into alien looking bodies.
Mm.
Um, and I could never quite tell because a lot of the times my memories are actually my memories, the here and now me, of slipping into these and then being discovered and booted out. Wrong one. I jaywalked. It's the best way I can think of it. And genuinely, like, some of those bodies seemed lab grown. I mean, obviously mine was lab grown because I had some of my genetics so that I could tether, but it wasn't, but some of them seemed sort of like how people will grow gray bodies or just different bodies that can be used as sleeves for your soul. Some of them seemed very much like that sort of a design, like a mass prototype species. That's probably doesn't sound right, but yeah, sort of a mass prototype that people use. And some of them actually seemed very organic, and I would interact with the folks that had the same body as me, or appeared the same, who seemed very organic, like they aged. Yeah, their pores. I don't know. It's so funny. Just a lot of my memories of them are of the here and now me sneaking in, and so I'm initially rather shocked when I see this like alien face super close to mine as I'm waking up. I'm like, whoa! And just,
Yeah, I have woke up, as you put it, inside my altars. And sometimes I have been completely freaked out.
Yeah, weird. But I'm trying to be like that initial.
It's like that initial, where the hell am I?
Yeah.
Who the hell am I? When am I? And I look around, and the one that I misbehaved the worst.
Ooh.
I was suddenly in my Kruger altar, and it was James Rink, me, Rochelle, who is no longer public, and a man that I can't recognize. And we were going into a cyborg factory because we were Kruger, we had enhancements, and they were supposed to be upgraded. Penny pops in. Here and now, Penny pops in and is completely overwhelmed, mortified by rows and 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 rows of robot bodies and humans on meat hooks around the room. Yeah. And I did my infamous EM pulse that I do when I'm terrified. And I blew up the power plant for this factory. And that blew up the factory, and that blew up us with it. And they were all in sleeves, as you describe it, and had to be reinserted into new sleeves. And NASA says that that's a volcano because I did this in 2016 and it's still smoking from the power plant exploding.
Yeah, there can be awkward moments slipping in. I don't know what else to call it other than jaywalking.
They made some sort of safety device since then that if here and now Penny pops into an altar, I can't do that. That I have absolutely no effect on that reality. Which, and then James was the unit commander, and he chewed me out really good. And
yeah, I mean, dang.
The here and now me had to explain to the here and now him what had actually happened, and he had to pass that information on to his altar so that the me there wouldn't get reprimanded anymore.
Right.
Because it wasn't her fault.
Right.
So.
Yep.
But they did put in a safety mechanism where that can't happen again. So,
yeah,
I blew up a cyborg factory on Mars.
High five.
So
Not a fan of
it's
though.
a case of once in a while I do something right, even if I'm doing something wrong.
It's all grayscale. It's all a slippery grayscale slip and slide out there.
Yeah. It's all grayscale.
You know.
So yes, it gets frustrating, irritating, but it is what it is.
Yep.
Well, we've been talking over an hour and a half on the recording, and that was about the time frame that we talked about having.
Yep.
So are there any last words you would like to say before we go?
I guess just that I appreciate that there's an actual community as haphazard and wild as the community is. I say that with absolute love because we're all coming from pretty interesting, different, gnarly places. And it's
Gnarly's a good description, yes.
all of it's messy. I'm very grateful only because, as we discussed earlier, it is tough spending the majority of your life just feeling crazy and alone and confused, just completely confused. And so, very grateful to all the people that had the courage to speak about this stuff long before I would even admit to myself what was going on with me, because that really helped me. So, basically, a big thanks to yourself and the people in the community for having that courage and providing that space. Thanks. The rest of it's pretty brutal, but I'll take my little cute, fuzzy tidbits where I can.
Not being alone matters.
Massively.
Well, I'd like to thank you for coming, and I'd like to thank our audience for listening through it all. And we'll do this again.
Yep.
When you come back from Alaska.
Right.
So, okay. Bye for now.
Bye.